Hey there, and welcome to the Jeffrey Van Dyke Show, a podcast for paradigm changers. Each week I speak with another influential leader who's changing the conversation for their audience, their industry, and this world. I am so glad you're here. Welcome to the show. Hello there, and welcome once again to the Jeffrey Van Dyke Show. I'm so glad to have you here. And I'm delighted to have my friend and mentor and colleague, Dr. Linda Backman, with us. Dr. Linda Backman is an expert psychologist and regression therapist with 44 years of private practice experience, including over 25 years guiding thousands of soul regressions in person and remotely. What this means is she's a past life specialist. And I have her on the show because I had one of the most impactful experiences I've had in my life with her. She is thoughtful and inquisitive, filled with wisdom, and has a really different view of the world given her work. She's the author of Souls on Earth, The Evolving Soul, and Bringing Your Soul to Light, all published by Llewellyn, and has been featured on a ton of broadcasts and webcasts, including Dr. Oz, Coast to Coast AM, Gaia TV. She also has her widely syndicated Souls on Earth podcast, where she interviews spiritual wayshowers. Dr. Backman was trained by Soul Regression pioneer, Dr. Michael Newton. Linda worked initially with Dr. Newton for 6 years, training other therapists. She's conducted soul regression training programs all over the world, in the US, Israel, Japan, England, the Netherlands. She travels extensively, conducting regression sessions and presenting at workshops and presentations. Again, the US, Ireland, England, France, Belgium, Australia, Israel, Japan, Australia, Switzerland. She's also presented twice at the College of Psychic Studies in England and the Institute for Research on Extraordinary Experiences in Paris. Linda founded the Raven Heart Center and Training Institute in Boulder, Colorado in 1997. She conducts private sessions via Zoom, guiding past life and between lives soul regressions, as well as offering spiritual mentoring and grief support. She is an international expert in understanding how reincarnation plays a pivotal role in our personal growth and relationships, significantly influencing humanity's progress. Later in the episode, you'll hear we talk extensively about where we're at as humanity right now and what her understanding of souls and intents, how that can be understood through the lens of her work with past lives and past life regression work with so many people. So it is my delight to have her on the show. And please join me in welcoming Dr. Linda Backman. Linda Backman, it is such a delight to have you here. This is, we only talked about doing this not long ago, but in some ways, this feels like it's been a long time coming. I want to start here. There's been a couple times in my life when I've met someone and had an experience that was so out of the blue, so unexpected, that there was no choice but to sit up and pay attention. And meeting you was one of those experiences. So for everybody listening, Linda was a guest lecturer at a conference I was at, and I had a profound experience, which I'll share a little bit more about in just a bit. But I say that because until that experience, the whole world of past lives and past life regressions was always something that felt, it never really spoke to me. And for everybody listening, Linda, as I said in the intro, is a past life regression specialist, or one of the leaders in the whole field. But having that experience kind of stopped me in my tracks. And the skeptic in me that's like, okay, why is everybody that seems to have a past life a king or a queen or somebody fabulous, right? Like, why aren't they like the dishwasher from the 15th century? I still have those questions, by the way, but the experience I had was so profound that I couldn't ignore it and couldn't dismiss it. So there's a whole lot of ground I want to cover today. I want to get into how you got into this. I want to address some of the skeptics that might be listening, or the skeptical part of us. But then I also, in the second half of this conversation, want to get into why this work matters, and why work matters now, and why it matters to individuals, and why it matters at a collective level. So we got a lot of ground to cover, but let's dive in here. How did you get into the work of doing past life work with people?
Okay, well, and just I could make all kinds of comments, Jeffrey, which I won't right now, in regard to what you've just said. Two quick comments. One, I was completely a skeptic, which I'll explain in a minute. Two, let's be sure we get back to that question about, well, why isn't, everybody a king and a queen, and what's that all about? Because that's really crucial, because most of us have not been kings and queens. So yeah. So, all right. So quick, relatively quick story. Approximately 30 years ago, I always tell it this way. I was minding my own business as a psychologist in general private practice. I think probably a lot of us in our middle 40s, well, we kind of think we've learned a fair amount about life by that point. Well, there was a lot more to come for me, that's for sure. So here's what happened. In 1993, I was in a group practice with psychologists and psychiatrists. I had a very dear male colleague, 14 years younger than I, who sadly, in the spring of 93, died from a type of lung cancer. And when he passed, to leave out all kinds of probably unimportant details, when he passed, I knew he started communicating with me from the other side, which was totally new to me. I'd never experienced that at that point.
How did you experience it when you say I knew? Like, what was the experience like?
Well, and that's a piece of this whole puzzle. It's intuition, and we're all intuitive. So we could get hung up in the, well, how do you know that's real? And I like to help people ground things in finding left brain validity, which we can talk about in our conversation today. But I felt him, and I don't mean I felt him with my fingers. I felt him, heart, gut, energy, like feeling energy. He also began to show me scenes of past lives. So now you can ask the same question and say, well, how did you know that? It's like mind's eye, close your eyes and feel like, you're not asleep, you're not dreaming, but there's almost like a movie screen, behind your eyelids. Still, when this started happening, I just thought, this is nuts. Wait, I'm Dr. Blah, blah, blah. Dr. Blah, blah, blahs don't have this kind of experience. So I started feeling this. I couldn't deny it. I knew I was having experiences I'd never had before. I said to my husband, I've got to tell you, I have to tell you what's going on. And I always need to add in, my husband and I both have a lot of graduate education. What does that mean? That just means we slogged through a lot of schooling, but we made it through that kind of schooling, and we're very, very liberal people, always have been. But we had never, before 93, talked about souls, past lives, reincarnation, all of that. So my husband sat down. He knew my colleague. They were lunch and golf type friends. And I started relating to my husband, what I was going through. And he just looked at me with this really calm expression. And I said, I could tell by looking at him, I said, you don't think this is weird. Why not? And he said, I guess here's why. He said, only now do I recall something that happened to me as a child. And of course, I said, what are you talking about? And then he began to relate to me that only in 93, in his middle 40s, or basically the same age, he said, then I recalled in 93 that when I was a boy, in my private time and space, I remembered my past lives in detail. My husband told me. And I said, well, you've never told me this before. And he said, well, I forgot about it. He said, I never told anyone. I thought they think I was the weirdest kid in the world. And so my husband Earl just basically said, if you're interested in this, go for it. I'll just add one more quick comment. And that is that at that point in time, I had a very busy psychology practice. Almost all my referrals came from medical doctors in the community. And so I thought, well, I'll never, if any one of my referrals, it's like Linda's practice is gone. That did not happen, but that made me very nervous.
I love that you named that, because one of the things I find with everybody I work with who's called to bring a body of work to this world is that there's always a coming out process, right? I always say to my audiences, like, everyone I work with has to come out. In fact, my inner guidance spoke to me one day, like, why is this the case? And they're like, Jeffrey, part of the reason you're gay in this lifetime is because you needed a life PhD in coming out. You need to know the ins and outs of that process. And it's never really that for my clients. It's never about sexuality for the people I work with, but it is about, I have knowing or information or insight or visions about something that my left brain can't make sense of. And the very thing I meant to do or talk about, at least in the way I look at the world, is threatening to completely rock the boat of the world I know. And it can scare the living bejesus out of them, right? So I love that you're sitting here going, not only was I, Dr. Linda Backman, with a traditional practice, but your referrals all come from the medical field. How did you deal with that?
Well, with a fair amount of trepidation in the beginning is the true answer. Yeah. And it was like I very gingerly tried to navigate that whole process. And it honestly, Jeffrey, took me at least 2 to 3 years. And with learning, it's like, okay, well, if I'm, one thing you learn if you become as you probably know, if you're a psychologist, you're formally licensed, you have a legal license to do that. And I can honestly say after this many years, I have never had any malpractice suit brought against me, thank goodness. Mm-hmm. But it's like, you have to jump through all these legal hoops. And so I felt compelled to jump through hoops. What I mean by that is, what credentialed training can I take? What grounded books can I read? Who are the other people in this field that have grounding? I mean, I guess that's the bottom line to the whole thing, is how can I ground this work in reality so it doesn't come off as airy-fairy? That was very important to me. So it took me years, and I had to have 2 or 3 people I trusted say, Linda, you've got to go for it. You know where your heart is at. I mean, I'm sure you, Jeffrey, in your own life, me knowing some things about your life, it's like you get to the point you can't deny the reality of who you are and the freight train that's right behind your back. And that's what was happening. That's what was happening.
Yeah. One of the things my guidance says about a calling, because to me, oftentimes callings feel external, right? And even the name calling, well, by definition, something called to you if you received a calling, right? It's a receptive act. But my guidance says you are the calling, the caller, and the called, right? Mm-hmm. And one way to hold it is, oh, my eternal self, or my soul, my eternal being, is the aspect of me that called to the me that I know, my personality self. And so it is a freight train of you calling yourself into your soul's mission.
Well, and if I can just quickly and briefly put that into the context based on my work, that would be, I'll just say this briefly so as to not make it overly complicated. When we are born, when we incarnate, we bring a fractal, a slice, a holographic portion of our divine soul energy into this body called Linda, or this body called Jeffrey, but the remainder is our higher self. And yes, I believe beyond the shadow of a doubt that my higher self was saying, okay, Linda, here's I'm serving a higher self speaking to Linda. Here's a platter I'm serving up to you. Do you want to partake, or are you going to step away from this and not be honest with who you really are at the core?
Yeah. Yeah. I would add, one of the things that I appreciated meeting you is you are grounded in a way that a lot of people in fields such as this, in my experience, often aren't. And I just can't, it's hard for me to take them seriously, or to, to like believe in the validity of their work, even though it may have it. And I think there's a particular, one of the things I always talk about folks with is, who can you bridge to based on who you are and your personality type and whatnot, right? I had a client years ago who got a contract with the second biggest mining company in the world. And he grew up in Rust Belt, Pennsylvania, with a kind of a son of a bitch dad, right? He could bridge to the miners. The miners would chew me up and spit me out. I could bridge to him, and he could bridge to the miners. And what I love about the personality in relationship to that divine eternal soul is, there's a particular, you do have a lot of grounding in a way that can speak to somebody like me, or maybe folks that haven't, been in the esoteric world much, but are still curious and interested about this. So, it's not, I think, not just the soul calling you into your soul's mission, if you will, but also using the personality that you were born into, or crafted and created in this lifetime. So yeah, beautiful. Good. So let's get into the work. What is a past life, and what is the work of discovering your past lives?
Okay. And I feel like, and you can kind of direct this, obviously, but what I think is most important, and I'll just say this briefly, and then I'm happy to answer your question, is that people will say to me, well, Linda, why do I need to know about my past lives? That's past, that's over, that's done with. Let's deal with now. Let's deal with now going forward. And I say to people, this is about how your soul grows from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime in real time. So what's happening now is related to what's come before. And we could call that karma. And I'll explain just a couple of terms and then stop digressing and come back to your question. As our soul grows lifetime to lifetime, we make free will choices because we're in human bodies. So that's karma that we can balance. But I always want the listeners to know we also gather something using Eastern language called dharma, which means not just in a past life, where did I trip and fall and need to clean that up, but also what did I accomplish that I intended to accomplish? That's the term dharma means soul intention. So what skills, what learning, what healthy relationships, whatever did I accomplish? So past life understanding is not just about tripping and falling. Yes, it is, but it's also about what did I learn? So again, I can put just skepticism into this. So I started studying. I already understood hypnotherapy. And I always want to use that term hypnotherapy, not hypnosis or hypnotist, because hypnotherapy implies something therapeutic, something beneficial. So I already, fortunately, in my training, had studied hypnotherapy. I really didn't use it very much until I learned that guiding regression means using intuition, means hypnotherapy, which truly is just relaxation. So I learned how to guide a client into a more relaxed state. That's all hypnosis is, and assist them to intuitively begin to discover the past life experiences that their soul and their guidance, and I'll use that term right now without diving into spiritual guides, that they were, what were they to learn about in that regression session.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to share a little bit about my experience and we'll go more deeply into this. But I mentioned at the beginning when I met you, it was at this conference and you did a group regression. Uh, and I didn't look at who the speakers were or what the agenda was ahead of time. It's a community I'm a part of. And I was like, oh, okay, past lives. Here we go. So you led us in a relaxation experience, walking down, I think, a 10-step flight of stairs, each one getting more and more progressively relaxed. Then there was this hallway and we were going to open a door and step into a past life. And I opened my door and it was just this void with this sparkle, like this orb of light. I'm like, okay, orb of light. I can still remember my mind commenting on it, right? So I'm orb of light, and I think there was going to be 3 scenes. This is how I remember it, and that was kind of scene 1, and then there was a scene 2, and then I was kind of this light spaceship flying up to some planet, and then there was scene 3, and I was meeting with the my kind of kin, my family in this other planet, and saying to them, hey, I've got an assignment like here on Earth and I'm like, I've got to go now. And I remember like my consciousness splitting into multiple expressions to go multiple places, one of which was this life and this planet. And then came back, and that was the end of the regression. And I was like, huh, okay, whatever. But so my mind was like, eh. What was interesting is my body felt stirred in a way, like I'm not a particularly emotional guy usually, but something in me was really stirred. And I'm also not someone in a conference setting to be like, hi, I need to talk and I need to debrief and I need to, but I'm like, because you did questions afterwards. And I was like, I feel like I should raise my hand. So I did. And all I remember is I started talking to you and my voice started to break. And then I just started to weep, like bawl, like, and I'm, for everybody listening, like I am talking like snot and tears and heaving. And my friend Isaac came and just held me and I just like heaved for a half hour or more. And I'll never forget afterwards, I talked to you during the break and you said, how was it being in this planet? And I just said, clear as day, it felt like being home.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't remember what the second question you asked was, but it hit me like a ton of bricks because I just said, like at a soul level, I didn't know this life was going to be this hard.
Mm-hmm.
And that like so much of the tears were about that. And I share that with everybody because it's one of those experiences, like I said, came out of the blue. I didn't see it coming. I didn't sign up to go to Linda Backman for a regression session. I was just at this conference, and it's not like everybody else there. It's not like you had 80 people heaving and, snot streaming out the doors from everybody. But something in me got touched and unlocked in a way that my logical brain still can't really make sense of. Except that this idea that, maybe I'm not from here, stopped being an intellectual question and became an experience. So does everybody have a past life? Does everybody have one? And where do we all come from if we do?
Well, let me just briefly, comment. I remember that day. I mean, I work with a lot of different clients, but I remember that day oh so well. And I can see exactly where you were sitting off to my left if I'm standing, given this presentation. I remember how much you were sobbing. And though I didn't know his name, there was a lovely guy basically holding you.
Yeah.
Which I thought, just a lot of people wouldn't do that. Male, female, two guys, whatever.
He's like
I thought
one of
that
my soul brothers. Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. But let me just say, and I know we'll move forward and get into this, but in some ways, I think, Jeffrey, at least from my vantage point, are your mission, my mission in life. And I think we have missions, plural, not a mission, but our missions are similar in that for people who choose to find that road, that path, that journey that aligns with who they are, that's your job. In many ways, that's my job.
Yeah.
So does everyone have a past life? And some of these are like what I call a Pandora's box question, where Linda's not going to jabber on for 30 minutes to give you one answer because that's inappropriate. But for me, so let's see how to make this small, but concise, but explanatory. When I first learned regression, I only thought about lives on Earth. And of course, I didn't even believe in that to start with, as everybody now knows. But over time, what I've learned now, 30 years later, in regard to your question of does everyone have a past life, truly the answer is no. And the reason it's no, and I'll try to say enough to be clear without going on and on, is I've come to understand that souls are designed, there are some souls that are designed, we might say, differently. There are souls that come to Earth over and over and over and over, kind of ad nauseum. Then there are souls that may come to Earth, but not ad nauseum, if you will. But they come to Earth because they are very, very wise. So we can be very human about this and be very Earth-centric and say, well, this ball called Earth, this planet called Earth is, that's really all that matters, except we live in a very large universe. And scientists, as you well know, grounded, astrophysics, those really smart people are discovering more and more and more. And we have, this new satellite that's in place that's going to send us back far more than Hubble ever sent it back to us, blah, blah, blah. The universe is huge. And what I came to learn, which I never dreamed I'd learn, trust me, is that I mean, my husband's a university professor of 30 years, though he's not doing that any longer, and I'm a psychologist. But I came to understand that some souls come from somewhere else in the universe and don't regularly come to Earth. And so if I align my mission somewhat with yours, what happened that day at that conference is that Jeffrey Van Dyke was kind of putting his finger, I would say more putting your heart on the pulse of who you are at the core. And that's my mission with people is who am I at the core? Who are you? Who is someone I would work with or you would work with? Who are we at the core and how can we live that and personally benefit as well as humanity benefits? So,
my experience, if I put it maybe in slightly additional language, was almost like I could feel the frequency of who I am, the signature, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the thumbprint, but energetically, the frequency of it in a way that again is not linear or logical or left brain. It's very experiential, but feeling. The image I'm getting now is a tuning fork,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
if you have a fork tuned to 440 megahertz per second, A440, and you're holding it at one end of a football field, and somebody on the other end of the football field strikes a fork tuned to the same frequency, yours will start vibrating. This is just physics. Resonant frequency. And my experience was almost as if my soul, ding, struck me, and I started reverberating with this non-logical knowing at a frequency level. Oh, this is who I am. Again, in a way that my brain can't make a whole lot of sense out of. But in terms of that like catharsis that came from it, that's the best way I could name it.
And that is, I could say the same thing that day, about 48 hours after my colleague passed, when I started having those experiences, I think I was having that same tuning fork experience that I couldn't run away from, or that I chose not to run away from, because it felt, it's like this alignment, when we're aligned and we know it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you break down souls into 3 different types of souls. And again, this is after 30 years of guiding people through regressions and having some of them maybe go back to past lives on Earth, but some of them go to past lives other places. So let's get into that. What are the 3 types of souls and how did this understanding come about?
Well, I'll just say that what's happened over the course of 30 years, and I guide regression almost every single, I have guided regression almost every single week for close to 30 years, and usually more times a week than once. And, I don't want people to think I don't take vacations. I do.
Right.
That's important. But
you're quite booked, so I know your schedule is very full of the work you do.
Well, the only reason I say what I just said is because my clients teach me. And what happens is there is a guidance process. And, for the lack, there's so many words we could use. We could say God, Great Spirit, the Source, the Tao, Kabbalism, beautiful word I love, Shekhinah, we might say the divine feminine, or whatever. My clients kept or keep teaching me. And so I can remember Jeffrey so well, like about maybe 6 to 8 years into my years of regression practice, most of my clients were going to lives on Earth or were souls that are designed primarily to incarnate on Earth. And then it's almost like ding, although I didn't hear a ding, but something shifted. And then, yeah, exactly. And then as I kept looking back on, sort of retrospectively, scratching my head and thinking about my clients. So maybe 8-10 years into my regression practice work, I began to realize that 50 to 60% of my clients weekly were souls like yourself that are designed not to come to Earth primarily or come from somewhere else in the universe. The term I was given is interplanetary. We could trade that out for, there are other terms that are a little more funky, like ET or starseed or something like that. But so then I began to learn, what I call Earth-based souls. I'm actually an Earth-based soul, that are designed mostly to come to Earth in order to grow and learn and evolve. Category 2, interplanetary souls. Souls that come from somewhere else in the universe that is evolved, that is healthy, that is has figured out how to live life from a more healthy perspective. Those are interplanetary souls. And then lastly, through my work, through client after client after client, I discovered there are souls that come from the angelic realm. The realm, we could say easily, the realm that serves the divine. But a better way to put it would be souls that their backbone, or to use a word you used a little bit ago, signature, is pure love and compassion. These are people that when you meet them, their core energy is so right-brained and aligned with love and caring and support and devotion. And boy, if you have them as a friend or a family member, they are like someone you want to turn to when you need support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I understand. I mean, an earth-based soul to me is the easiest to understand. I have work to do here, maybe lessons I want to learn here, and so I keep coming back here. Okay, check. Interplanetary soul, primarily not from here. Got that. What's the difference between, like, an angelic realm to me seems like it would also be interplanetary. I know when I talk to you, like the feeling tone of it is different, but like when I think about interplanetary, like, oh, big old galaxy, big universe, other places. How do you distinguish between those two?
Yeah, good. That's a great question because since you're asking it, it's fairly easy. And it's almost like I want people to think about almost the universe like a map. Or let's just make it a little bit simpler instead of just using universe because that's such a vague term. Let's start with this solar system that Earth is a part of. So, and I'm sure people are wondering, well, Linda, but what about the Milky Way galaxy, blah, blah, blah. And I'll comment about that in a minute, but just everybody kind of tamp it down to, here's this big solar system that includes Jupiter and Pluto and Earth and so on and so forth. Most interplanetary souls that incarnate on Earth come from somewhere within our solar system. A planet, a star system. It could be a place that lacks density. It could be interdimensional space. An angelic soul serves the divine force that guides Earth. And so it is a specific, and I know this is it's always hard to put words to this, and I hope people are comprehending, but the angelic realm to which I refer is the realm of love and compassion that ties to the divine power. And I could say more about that if you want, but the divine power that serves to guide Earth. and not the solar system or the galaxy or the universe.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So let's go more deeply into what knowing about your past life can do for you. Like if somebody's listening and maybe they've never done past life work, um, I would have put myself in that category. um, Going like, huh, this is different, but kind of interesting. Like, besides it just being novel, what kind of transformations do you see people have as they engage in this type of work?
Yeah, we've got small questions, big answers. So it's like, why do I need to know about my past lives? And of course, then the next step would be, why do I need to know about my soul and where I come from? And I think that's equally important. The vast majority of us were not kings and queens. That's a complete misnomer. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some souls. This is where I have to keep reining my thoughts in and listening to my guidance, like how far do I take that or take that? We have past lives that help us understand ourselves now. And that's the only reason. This is about now. So it's not, it's about past lives, but it's like, see if I can think of a really good example. Either why, okay, so let's just say, Jeffrey, you're working with someone and they're in the process of, I might say, letting their heart sing and being on their true mission. But something really scares them. And they're having a heck of a time casting aside that fear. Maybe that fear comes from a past life. And, inside, when we have fears that are unexplained, then often, sadly, we beat up on ourselves. This internal self-talk. What's the matter with me? Why am I afraid of that? Why do I let that get in my way? Blah, 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 blah. A fear, a phobia, a relationship. This person doesn't believe in me, So what do I do about that? When we latch onto a grounded explanation that is a past life, then the process is about, and I'm way oversimplifying, is taking hold of it, but then releasing it.
Yeah.
And then the fear. Yeah. Go ahead.
One of the things that I think is a primary need, and I think a lot of us called to be guides in this world, part of our role is to be sense makers, and in a world that increasingly doesn't make sense. And one of the things I always say to people is, look, if you signed up in this lifetime to be a sense maker for humanity, what would the training program for that be? Well, you would most likely have a life that didn't make a whole lot of sense, or at least didn't make sense in certain areas, and you had to wrestle with it in order to make sense of things. And oftentimes I find that when things in life don't make sense and standards and answers fail, we have to go off the reservation, as it were, right? We have to go exploring in different mediums, different realms, using different tools to do our best to create some sense and do the sense making in order to get present to what is, which allows us to own the story we're experiencing, integrate it, release it, what have you. So I'm hearing that as a big piece. I'm curious. There's a couple places I want to go. One, maybe a month or two ago, I had Dr. Rachel Yehuda on the show, who is one of the world's experts in epigenetics, right? Which is basically saying that like there are markers on our genes that predispose us to react to or experience certain things in life a certain way. She did a ton of research on the children of Holocaust survivors, and looking at stress response and all sorts of different things, and then went and studied the children of mothers who were pregnant when they were in the Twin Towers, and then later had their kids, and what was the stress response that got handed down there, right? So okay, so I'm gonna layer two things on for this conversation, because it's so that's one thing I have in mind, like, okay, so what about this is past lives, and what about it is maybe epigenetics or things handed down that we could look at from that vantage point. And then the other thing, I had an astrophysicist on the show, Colin Stewart, talking about the nature of time. And he's not, from what I can tell, particularly, like, he doesn't go into these esoteric conversations. He's straight up scientist. But even from a more Newtonian scientific perspective, he says the best we can tell right now is that time is flat, that past, present, and future, like scientifically, is all happening right now. Just at different, it's almost as if there's a building with an elevator, and like, which floor are you on? That's called now. Oh, this is floor 10, but I could easily, theoretically, go to floor 15, and there's another life happening simultaneously, because now is the past, present, and future. So even the idea of past, when we talk about past lives, is it past? Is it another version of life that's happening also right now? Do we have future lives? Do you do regressions into future lives? So anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff I just threw into the mix all at once. But I'm curious, like, I mean, I know you're not an expert in epigenetics, but have you looked into that at all? And what are your thoughts about that as it relates to what's happening now? And then we can get into time and future lives.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, let's just kind of work backwards. I get what you just brought up about time. I am asked a lot. And my best answer, that's not maybe the way I want to verbalize it. Again, having guided so much regression for so many years, and I would love to have a conversation with anybody, including the person you're speaking about that you had on your podcast, based on the notion of Earth and the evolution of humanity. It is my complete belief, acceptance, knowing, because I've guided so many regressions, that humanity, meaning the souls and body on this planet, is progressing in real time. Mm-hmm. That what happened to me, I won't go off into details. I know a lot about my own past lives. I have a past life. I died in the Holocaust as a teenage French girl, and I know a fair amount about that life. That life, along with many others, obviously informs my life today. I have personally no doubt that we advance as a soul on Earth, in body, lifetime to lifetime to lifetime, that all our lives, past, present, and future, are not happening at once, or humanity would not be working to progress.
All right.
And yes, we can get some idea of future lives through regression, but my complete understanding is that future lives are potentiality, mm-hmm. But it depends on what's happening now.
Yeah.
What comes next? The question. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, the epigenetics question, and I think this is where you're headed. And I give a fair number of, I do a fair number of interviews on programs about what is now called ancestral healing, which is a very popular topic in spiritual progressive circles. Ancestral healing, like, okay, so in my bloodline there was abuse, how can that be healed? And the basic premise that I want to just speak about is that our bloodline overlaps what we might call our soul line, meaning, quick example, I know certain things about past lives where people that I know in life today, embodied souls that I know in life today, I have known before. And I know some things about what happened before, so that epigenetics overlaps soul evolution, if that makes sense what I'm saying, that it's all intertwined almost like a spider web, because we repetitively incarnate with some of the same souls.
Why is that?
Basically, it's because we, as a soul, we belong to a small group of souls. I like to call it a soul pod or soul homeroom. And we've agreed to work with each other. And I push their learning and they push my learning. And we make agreements lifetime to lifetime, because you might say, we know, in quotes, we know each other so well that we make these agreements. It's like, I just chuckle for a minute. I think about my son, our son, and sometimes I feel like he's behaving like my parent versus my child. Now, granted, he is in his early 50s. I mean, he's certainly not a child, but it's because we've traded places.
Right.
Because we help each other back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah. Would you say, I definitely, maybe a handful of people throughout my lifetime, but every now and again I meet someone that I just know, and it's like there's no explanation for how that could be, but you meet, or I'll just speak for my own experience. I meet them. My one of my friends, Martin, way back when I started coaching, I was interested in spirituality in the workplace and spirituality in work. And I Googled it and found this Center for Spirituality in the Workplace from this university business school in Canada. I emailed the guy. 20 minutes later, he called and was like, "Hi, this is Martin Root." And I was like, oh, hi. We talked for 2 hours. And at the end, he just said, "It's good to re-meet you." And it was very much that experience, like, in this lifetime, we'd never met, but we picked up as if it was yesterday from the moment we said hello. And at a soul level, it's just like, yeah, I know you, you know me, like, oh, this dance, this is familiar, and at the end, it's like, he acknowledged it. He was like, "It's good to re-meet you." Is that common when you meet people in that kind of soul cluster, if you will?
I would say if people accept that we have a soul cluster, a soul pod, whatever we want to call it, yes, it's very common. And, we just know how to put context to it when we call it a soul pod. But I've had that experience personally many times. And because I studied my own past lives and my own soul history and that sort of thing, I know how I've known my daughter-in-law before. And I came upon that in an uncanny way, but it just kind of fell into my brain. It's like, no wonder I have these feelings about her. And I'll say to the listeners, actually, they're all positive when people talk about,
Even family
yeah.
clean here. All right, let's go here. when I look at Earth right now, and I look at humanity right now, it feels very much to me like we are at an unprecedented time in human history. Uh, I, I can look at history and go, okay, yeah, has there been war? Has there been inequity? Has there been this, that, and the other thing that we're repeating again now? Yes, absolutely. The thing that feels distinct to me right now is our relationship to the very environment we live in that, like, oh heck, if we don't change, we're basically signing off on our own demise as a species, right? I don't think Earth is going to go anywhere, but like, we might just call this experiment called being human done, right? That, and I feel like that's very much a possibility, and it's one that I feel like is a collective decision that we're in the midst of making. I'm curious, at that macro level, what are you seeing from your lens in the work you do?
Yeah. Well, I totally agree to start with. We are making decisions. And I don't mean we are signing off at the end on those decisions. But yes, I do think if we don't wake up to the, care of the earth, care of animals,
Care of each other.
genocide, whatever, maybe, certainly not in my lifetime will life end on this planet. I don't believe that's true. And probably not in your lifetime either. But yes, and I think we're being, I think we're almost pushing ourselves more and more to the brink of, so what are we going to do? And I, well, to wax even more esoteric, if I can take that liberty, let me see how to make this simple. In regard to earth-based souls, interplanetary souls, and angelic realm souls, our soul level, our higher self level, at that level, there is you might say, almost like an organizational chart. That makes it sound very left-brained. But there is a high council of advanced higher selves, if you will, like a Congress, like a parliament, that serves Earth, one that serves the interplanetary world, if you will, and one that serves the angelic realm. And they are concerned. Mm-hmm. They are way more than just concerned. And I know that they are doing all that they can to try new things, but we're not marionettes. In other words, they don't come down here, they don't pull our strings, so to speak, and say, okay, Jeffrey, you're not going to do this, you are going to do that, because Jeffrey, Linda, and all of us that are human have free will. Mm-hmm. But they are at times almost at a loss as to how to solve. On Earth, we have recently had another horrific shooting with semi-automatic weapons. They can't come down here and change our laws.
Yeah.
We have to decide to do that. But yes, there are huge concerns, and humanity could go away, but not in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah. I'm just, I know in other conversations you've told me, early in your practice, Earth beings, then the interplanetary thing started to show up. Then the angelic realm thing started to show up. and that more recently you're encountering more and more people from the angelic realm. So I'm just curious, like from an evolutionary standpoint, at a soul level, what you're noticing, what trends you're seeing, and why are certain souls coming now? Like, what's their intent?
Well, I know, just in regard to what you just asked, the higher realm is making changes to try to affect humanity. One change among many that's being made is that angelic, let me back up a step. Angelic realm souls, what I call AR souls, do not often incarnate at all. They serve, they're like ambassadors of divine energy. But I'm learning through regression and to some extent through my own intuition that the higher realm has decided Earth needs more angelic realm souls. We need more of this. You know, I don't want to make love and compassion sound simplistic. It is not. And there isn't a better language because all we have is human language. But I know that more angelic souls are being prepared to come to Earth. It is challenging for an angelic soul to be in body because we're not a pure love and compassion society here. So I'm seeing more and more of my clients are angelic realm souls. More and more of the people that take some of the virtual courses that I offer are angelic realm souls in order to help them, these incarnate souls, live and manage on Earth and serve the purposes of their current life. So, yeah.
The language I'm hearing is to help them assimilate, almost as if they're refugees from another country coming in, like, all right, help me figure this one out. Yeah, no, I mean, when I hear the words love and compassion, certainly there is a softness that I think is often associated with it, but there can also be a fierceness, fierce love, you know, fierce compassion even. Uh, what, two final questions. What's been your biggest discovery? Like what are some of the things that you're like, this blew me over when I learned this?
Yeah, what stands out? Well, the first thing that pops into my mind would be how, just like how to verbalize this. When I'm guiding regression, and I always say this to the client, I drive the bus. In other words, I get the engine running and I do my best to keep the regression for the client on the road moving forward. I do not give the client any information. In other words, I don't serve as a channel. The client becomes their own channel. But I also have to be a little bit like what I might call a soul encyclopedia. You know, we used to have these big bookcases with all these books. Everybody's house had, you know, Encyclopedia Britannica. I have to understand. Well, it's a little bit like, Jeffrey, when you described what was occurring for you when I was giving that talk at that conference, like, what does it mean when the client tells me this or tells me that? So one of the pieces that helped me a lot is when the client is describing that at the soul level, the client, they literally describe wings. And it's like, that rings a bell in my head, like, okay. And I don't know for sure the minute I hear that. And of course, I'm not telling the client that, they're telling me that. But that is the first clue, and I keep it all zipped up, but that is the first clue that I may be working with an angelic realm soul. So that was kind of a fascinating discovery of a literal, I'm remembering one client, I'll just say this briefly, but a woman, maybe in her 50s, guide regression, and I guide past life to working at the soul level regression. And so she describes herself with wings. When we finished the regression, she was just almost laughing. And she said, Linda, this is so uncanny. She said, I'm an artist and I'm an interior decorator and big houses, big projects. And she said, my favorite pictures to either paint or place in someone's house are angelic images. And she's not some heavily religious person at all.
Yeah.
So that discovery of, oh, here's what wings might mean.
It's interesting as you say that. I'm like, oh, and my first experience was, and I'm this ball of light. Yeah. Fascinating. If there's one thing you've learned that you wish everybody knew, what would it be?
That we're always in body with purpose. And, and purpose can be, what Jeffrey does to pay his bills or what Linda does to pay her bills. And I'm going to say and versus or, but it could be or we're in body. I mean, I know this, this is probably the easiest way to answer this. As I studied over time my past lives, I discovered that I'd had past lives where I was a wife and at times a mother. And I was more and this is how we grow and evolve. So I was more into myself than into my relationship or my children. And so, and fortunately, this came naturally for me in this lifetime, and I'm so glad about that. But I will soon be married 55 years. My husband is very much my life partner. And I always wanted to be a mom and a grandmother, and I am that. And that is a key part of my life. So that, yes, I do this work and I love what I do, but we have purposes, not just a purpose.
So good. I love coming from the vantage point, the standpoint of like, all souls have purposes. And I think it's so life-giving to come from that standpoint, even if you're not necessarily clear about what it is or, all the different ways you might express it, but to go, this soul has purpose. And even to look at other humans, especially those we may not understand or even appreciate, and go, oh, that soul has purpose as well. And I don't know where this person is on their soul's evolutionary journey. Right? That's their journey. But they have purpose, and so do I. And for anybody listening, I think holding that understanding, this soul has purpose. Okay, I was going to end there. One final question I have to ask about this, though. Does our soul purpose evolve over time, or is there a through line of soul purpose over lifetimes? This is my add-on question I didn't anticipate asking.
The answer truly, Jeffrey, is yes and yes.
Yeah.
So there is a common thread, lifetime to lifetime. But also, and I talk with people about this, and my intuition talks to me about this, we have addendums. So, okay, so maybe Jeffrey's accomplished what he initially at the soul level agreed to accomplish in life today. And then we, you, me, anyone, we have the option of an addendum, an add-on to our original agreement. And there are many of us who have add-ons.
I love that you said that. My intuition right now is telling me everyone I work with, most of my clients, are all doing the extra scoop. And I'm working with them on refining and understanding and delivering on that. So delightful. Linda, I am so glad you've been able to spend this time with us. Thank you so much for your generosity. Thanks for your work in this world. Thanks for being a partner on the journey with me. For people that want to learn more about your work, I know you've written many books, you do online courses, you do regressions for people. Where can they go to find more about what you're up to in the world?
Well, let me just say, Jeffrey, it's been a thrill. Our interaction to me is always so rich. So thank you so much for inviting me to have this beautiful conversation with you. Easiest way is to go to my website. And my website is 3 words run together: Raven, like the bird, heart, like the heart in your chest, center.com, ravenheartcenter.com.
How do you spell center? Is it the English spelling or American spelling?
It's the American spelling, CENTER, not right. TRE. Yeah.
Ravenheartcenter.com. Beautiful. So, Linda, thank you so much for your time, for your heart, and for everybody listening. If you're interested, curious, I know there's lots of resources on Linda's website. She has many books as an easy way to get in and start exploring this. If there's something in here that activated, hey, there might be answers I've been looking for. So if that's you, I encourage you to check it out. Linda, thank you once again. All my love. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Hey there, thanks so much for listening in. If this conversation was powerful, if it stirred your soul or inspired your journey, then be sure to share it with a friend. Just copy and paste the link wherever you're listening to this podcast and text that link right now to a friend that you think would be inspired by this episode. And if this is your first time here, be sure to click that subscribe button over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a rating and review so I can get to know you and your thoughts better. To learn more about the work I do with emerging and established paradigm changers, go to thecourageousmessenger.com. That's all for today. Thanks so much for being here, and I hope to see you in the next episode.